Hey everybody, welcome to this week's edition of Let's Talk Teens with Dr. Kela. Well, let's get right into it. This week, I want to talk about the dangers of nicotine and the use of e-cigarettes amongst young people. Now, this is a bit personal for me. My father smoked for well over 50 years, traditional cigarettes, and unfortunately, that's why he's no longer in my life. My dad ended up being diagnosed with lung cancer and heart disease, and both those were exacerbated by his long history of smoking. And so if I can prevent any young person from even starting the habit, that's something that I want to do. My dad got hooked on cigarettes when he was a young person in his teens. So let's talk about it. Why are e-cigarettes so dangerous and unsafe for the youth? Well, number one, because they contain nicotine. You all, nicotine is extremely addictive. Most people, when they think about addictions, they think of alcohol or maybe even illegal and so-called hard drugs like heroin, cocaine, meth, and such. But let me tell you, nicotine is a seriously addictive substance. And the reason it's particularly dangerous for young people is because it can literally damage your brain development. Yes, as a teenager, your brain is not fully developed yet. And because nicotine is addictive and causes damage to your brain, it could actually cause you to have difficulty with focusing and paying attention in school. Also, it can lead to mood changes and irritability, both when you use it and when you're withdrawing from it. Another danger, of course, is going through withdrawals if you've already begun smoking and using nicotine and then you suddenly stop. Another reason that this is dangerous is because of the effect on the lungs. Now, some of you have been marketed to by the tobacco companies and told that, well, e-cigarettes really aren't as dangerous as traditional cigarettes. They really don't contain any nicotine. That is not true. The tobacco companies are playing a game with you. When I was doing my research on this topic, I looked up some information at the CDC, and it was found that many of these companies that market e-cigarettes as having quote unquote no nicotine were in fact lying. Their products absolutely did contain nicotine. Now, what's the difference between an e-cigarette and a traditional cigarette? Well, basically, an e-cigarette is a cigarette with technology. Think of it this way. If you take a pot of water and then you boil it, make it hot, what happens? It turns into steam or a vapor, right? That's science. With e-cigarettes, you have a device, the liquid, and a heating element that turns it into a vapor. What the tobacco companies have done is just basically repackaged what they used to do in my dad's generation for the new generation. They make the e-cigarettes look cool by using technology. Many of them look like pens, USB drives, or sometimes even a traditional cigarette with a cool look. What makes it very appealing to young people is the flavors. They taste good like candies or mints instead of just the traditional menthol taste of the old-fashioned cigarettes. Again, this is dangerous. They want to get you hooked so that you will be a lifelong customer. I don't want you to end up like my father later in life with lung problems, lung cancer, and heart disease. Now, another thing that tobacco companies don't tell you is that in addition to nicotine, there are other dangerous chemicals in your e-cigarette. Of course, there are chemicals that give it the flavor or the nice taste. Also, there are chemicals in there that help it to vaporize. These chemicals settle in your lungs. You don't want that because it's already starting to damage your lungs as a young person. And then by the time perhaps you're middle age, you're coming to see me for COPD and asthma, along with other lung issues. You may catch pneumonia more easily just because you started using e-cigarettes. Whenever you make a decision, you should weigh the risk versus the benefit. To be honest, young people, I really don't see any benefits to using e-cigarettes. So keep this in mind anytime someone offers an e-cigarette to you or they make it seem like it's cool. There's nothing cool about buying a disease and buying problems for your life. Now, I forgot to do this last week. I'm still doing the giveaway of Nia and the Numbers Game, a teenager's guide to education, relationships, and sex. Think of this week's topic as me guiding you and giving you information and educating you about the dangers of these e-cigarettes. So the first person to put in hashtag no vape or hashtag no nicotine, we will send you a free copy via email of Nia and the Numbers Game. Until next week, everyone, think positive and be positive. And I want to remind you, just like we dial 911 for emergencies, there's a national hotline, 988, for young people for our mental health crises. Remember, 988. I'll see you all next week.